Escape room workers of Reddit, what's the most absurd thing players have done? So this isn't necessarily absurd on the player's side, but instead from the game master. Once our players were doing the bank heist theme, done in the dark, and you have headlamps, and about 4 puzzles in, one of my employees realized they had an item in their pocket still. So we brain blasted for a couple of minutes, and decided the best course of action was to pretend the employee was a security guard and walk around the bank. Therefore, we went over the room intercom and warned them to hide because it looked like the security guard was coming to them. Seeing all the players hide in complete fear was priceless. One guy wasn't even hiding, he was just sprawled up against the wall. Our security guard walked around, said, "Humph, everything seems good," and placed the item down on the desk. It was legendary that they didn't suspect anything. Story 2. I once had a group of drunk guys go in, and they ran through their allotted hints pretty quickly. They asked for another hint, and we said over the speakers that they were out of hints. One of the guys threatened to start taking off his clothes until we gave another hint. Edit. For everyone asking, we didn't even have to give him the extra hint. His friends chilled him out and ended up finding the next clue pretty shortly after that. Story 3. Oh my god, my time has come. People do dumb shit in escape rooms constantly, but that's the whole point, and it's usually in good fun. The best part of my old escape room job was that it was literally right next door to a brothel. People would frequently come to our door, not realizing that they were one door over from where they wanted to be, and ask, "Hey, how much?" Me and my customer service voice. Well, it depends on how many people you bring. It's $40 each if you're a group of 2, and goes down to $32 each if you're a group of 8. Usually, we recommend groups of 4 to 6 people. That seems to be the sweet spot. Their looks of horror will make me laugh forever. Story 4. I work at an escape room and too many customers come to play and then put the torches in their mouths, which is disgusting. We've had a couple get in the room and start to get frisky instead of playing the game. I had one who was super drunk and just started to piss in the corner of one room. Another lady who had been drinking decided to stay in the room and puke everywhere, and then put props over the top of piles of puke instead of leaving the room to go to the toilet. And many others. Story 5. Had a group come in, I noticed they had been drinking a little, but seemed mostly fine. So I let them into the room and start the clock. They were just wandering around. At the half-an-hour mark, they were laying on the floor and rolling around. They didn't do any harm to the room. I don't remember if they even solved one puzzle. When I let them out after an hour, they claimed it was fun. But they didn't really do anything? And did they remember it the next day? IDK. Story 6. One time, a group was trying to figure out the code to a locked compartment. So this huge guy in the group decided this was a waste of time and tried to rip off the compartment door with his bare hands. He was almost successful, but we stopped him before he could do further damage to the door. He didn't understand what was wrong. Another one happened where a group were handcuffed and they couldn't find the key. The game master was trying to give them clues to find the key, but they still couldn't find it. So one group member thought it would be best to use his leg. There was a table in the room with some items on it. He proceeded to knock over all the items with one kick. That group didn't win. Story 7. I don't work at one, but my co-worker went to one last year and his story was hilarious. He's a really serious guy from Boston, got talked into going to one with his wife and a few old friends that had come down for vacation. He said as soon as they walked in, he saw a broom that looked completely out of place, so he grabbed it. He thought they'd need it at some point. They made it out of the first room. They go to the second room, and he's still got the broom. He swears it was just too out of place to not be part of the puzzle at some point. They make it through the second room. The third room, they get stuck. They're reading the clues over and over, and he gets fixated on the broom while everyone else is searching the room. He's looking it over up and down, checking the handle for markings. Mind you, he has terrible nearsight vision, and checking the bristles. Time's running out, and he's arguing with his wife at this point that the broom has the final clue. Time runs up, they walk out, and the crew is just dying laughing at him. Someone left the broom by mistake. Nothing more, nothing less. He carried that damn broom through 3 rooms. He got a good laugh about it later, but he was embarrassed at the time. It was a great story he told the next morning at work. Story 8. In the Netherlands, there is this prison escape room where everyone is a prisoner and you have to escape prison. It is done in an actual ancient prison. There are about 300 participants and 85 actors, mostly prison guards and some prisoners. They have over 15 storylines, which you can follow, and there are other inmates, actors, which will lead those storylines and send you one quests. Coming back to the question, at the beginning they warned everyone that no physical contact is allowed, because during the first time, people would actually threat each other to get money, and guards have been attacked. Also, they had to warn people that you weren't supposed to try climbing the 50 feet high prison wall. Story 9. Oh God, I have many stories to tell. I worked for various escape rooms for a few years. You would be amazed at the number of players who want to bring their own tools into the game. Screwdrivers, lockpicks, etc. You have to nail down everything too, or players will absolutely destroy it. The drunker they are when they start, the worse the damage is. We once had a player literally try to tear off the drywall because they thought there had to be something behind it. In one of our rooms, we had this big, heavy-duty picture frame screwed into the wall with 4 nails, and they still managed to pry it off. We've had doors taken off hinges, kids trying to crawl inside vents. The list goes on. I don't know if it counts as absurd, but one of the unique experiences I've had there is being a wedding proposal. The guy worked it out with us ahead of time. We put the ring and a note he wrote, professing his love behind some bars in the last puzzle you unlock before getting out of the room. His girlfriend actually ended up fitting her hands between the bars and got the note far too early, but the guy was still running around trying to solve stuff because he didn't notice, and she was sitting there reading it and starting to bawl. She said yes, BTW. Story 10. I feel kind of bad about the time our group unscrewed half the pictures on the wall using a paper clip, since none of us had the sense to think that maybe the pictures being screwed down was a sign we weren't supposed to look behind them. Edit. To elaborate, we managed to crack the combination lock to a drawer which had a jar of paper clips in it, to which our reaction was, do we have to pick a lock? At first, and then, hey, I think these fit perfectly into the screws, but on the walls. Turns out, the actual purpose of the paper clips was to make a chain to dangle into a tube to pick up a key. Can't remember if we had a magnet or a hook to help, which we discovered after looking behind the one picture in the room not screwed down and finding the code to the combination lock on the drawer below the first one. Story 11. I feel kinda bad about the time our group unscrewed half the pictures on the wall using a paper clip, since none of us had the sense to think that maybe the pictures being screwed down was a sign we weren't supposed to look behind them. Edit. To elaborate, we managed to crack the combination lock to a drawer which had a jar of paper clips in it, to which our reaction was, do we have to pick a lock at first? And then, hey, I think these fit perfectly into the screws, but on the walls. Turns out the actual purpose of the paper clips was to make a chain to dangle into a tube to pick up a key. Can't remember if we had a magnet or a hook to help, which we discovered after looking behind the one picture in the room, not screwed down, and finding the code to the combination lock on the drawer below the first one. Story 12. We had a room called Prison Break. The players started in a cell, and to make it realistic, there was a toilet in there. Gladly, people didn't take a piss or a dump in it, but also refused to touch it, although we were giving a hint that there was a hidden key by the toilet. Later in that game, they had to search for a specific case file for a murderer, but they just searched for their own file, as if we would put a file for every new player in there. Many people lost their game on that spot, as it was the last quest to do. Story 13. Finally, a question I can answer. Most of the time, people are just plain stupid, which can be fun and frustrating depending on how the people react to realizing it. It's very annoying when the people are cocky beforehand and then don't manage anything without a hint and somehow blame us for messing up. There's also been instances of people throwing up or trying to use the prop toilet inside of one of the prison cells. But I think my favorite absurd thing was the one proposal I had while I worked at an escape game. You might think, well, isn't that romantic? And I thought so too, until I found out that escape rooms aren't just something they both love that makes the proposal unique. It was the first room ever. Never played an escape game ever? Weird choice of scenery to propose. Even weirder when you consider that they took 2 friends with them. But it doesn't end there. They barely managed to get out, and the ring was hidden in the very last queue, so if they hadn't managed, shit would have become very awkward. It did anyway, because when he proposed, neither of their friends really reacted to it, just stood there blankly. Which was made even worse by the fact that the guy was supposed to film the whole thing, which he didn't. And the other girl didn't even know he was proposing, so the surprise at least should have coerced a smile out of her. Nothing. The proposal speech was also delivered with as much passion as a paper bag, and as it turned out, the dude told everyone at the reception that he didn't really want to marry her, at least not for now. But she got pregnant, so now it pushed him into it. She said yes, but holy shit, all of us watching were hoping she wouldn't. Now imagine proposing, or even worse, being proposed to in an escape room, knowing you are being watched and listened to through cameras. What an absurd choice to make. Story 14. Obligatory is not an escape room worker but a participant. Once I went to an escape room with my mom, dad, mom's best friend, and her 2 sons. The premise of the room was a bank heist. We start off trying to break in from a small room after solving the clues there. Afterward, we go to another room via the bricks in the wall, solve the clues there, open the vault, and take as much as we can. Meanwhile, the alarm starts to blare, and we need to get out quickly via another brick wall. In the second room, there were a couple of murdered dummies and an actor who was playing dead. He was the one who sounded the alarm after we managed to break into the vault. Well, everyone was trying to get into that aforementioned vault. I was sitting there with my empty money bag and decided to loot the dead bodies, including the actor, either for more clues or valuables. We were pretending to robbers after all. Sadly, all the bodies had nothing on them. After all is completed, we take the money bags and manage to bolt. We sat there and discussed the room, pretty thrilled. That was when the GM came, laughing his ass off, in tow with the actor, who looked pretty bewildered. What they told us was that during the 3 years, at the time, this escape room was created, nobody had tried to frisk the bodies, not to mention so thoroughly. I checked every pocket, even took the shoes off the dummies, didn't go that far with the actor though. I felt terrible. I didn't realize the actor wasn't a dummy. He was lying on his face during the heist, and I didn't take his shoes out because I noticed the paper with the code on a shelf close to the body. I was mortified. I had checked even his back pockets. My group was fucking laughing their asses off. The guy was pretty young too, and new to this job, so I guess we were both pretty embarrassed. Story 15. I'll weigh in with my mildly amusing escape room anecdote. Not that absurd, more anticlimactic. This was actually a break-in format where you were supposed to recover some locked-up McMuffin. We were really close, and the next step was evidently to unlock a door. We solved the puzzle that we figured would allow us to do this. But then when we tried the door, it wouldn't open. So for the remaining 15 minutes or so, we scrambled frantically looking for more clues to figure out how to open this damn door, but we failed. When we asked about it afterward, the guy was confused because the last puzzle we solved was the one that should have opened the door. After some back and forth, it turns out the door just has a bit of a funny handle. Not part of the puzzle in any way, just a door that works differently from what you're used to. That's all that stood between us and a sweet victory. Story 16. I'm not an escape room worker, but I went to a horror-based escape room once where we had a certain amount of time to complete it, or one of the workers would come in dressed up to frighten us and tell us that we had lost. When we entered one of the rooms, we saw that there was a shelf full of old VHS tapes of different movies, one of which was related to the escape room, so we put it on the VHS player, got some clues, and continued to investigate. But we came to a halt. When we began to run out of time, one of my friends, who was in the escape room, had the great idea of trying the rest of the VHS tapes. Most of them were blank, but suddenly, one of them started playing a slightly broken children's movie that wasn't at all related to the escape room, and we started to panic because we couldn't take the tape out or turn it off. And suddenly, we hear one of the workers who was monitoring us and had a speaker connected to our room laugh his ass out like I haven't heard anyone before at these dumbass, scared as fuck 15-year-old watching a distorted children's movie in a dark, scarily decorated room. The guy felt so bad that he gave us extra time. I suspect, to see more of our fuck-ups before giving us a scare.